Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Good morning, good morning. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection, with a very important and very fun subject today, art. Art, it's almost like a name, art, right?
That's right.
Art, the great communicator. Art, the great communicator. I kind of use this name in a personified way. I gave personality to this name. It's a noun. But I almost treat it as a person because art is a great communicator. There's art all over the place. There's art in the universe. There's art on the earth. There's art
everywhere. I was telling you off the air that I once watched a video of a former president. I don't know if he's still the president of, I think it's Uruguay, José Mojica, I think is his name. He said, no estás deprimido, estás distraído. Referring to, you're not depressed, but you're more distracted from the beauty that we can see in the sky, in the heavens, in the earth, in the trees, in the rivers, in music. Can you imagine what would we do without music? So art is an amazing thing, and I've been wanting to do a show on art for a long time, and I kept talking to people, how do you talk about art? How do you frame this issue? And I'm glad that a show right before the 52nd show is going to be on art. And I mentioned 52nd because we're going to be celebrating our first anniversary with this AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection platform we started a year ago. And by the way, David Murrieta, who is one of our guests, did a mural on 7th Street, just south of the I-10 on Tacos Juarez. And not only did we use art for that, but we also used art in the form of music because Mr. Alonso, I don't recall his first name, I think it's David Alonso, if I'm not mistaken, he did a jingle, the jingle that you hear on this platform, he did it. So when we launched the platform, we used art. We used visual arts, we use the mural, and we use music. And I'm just, one of the questions that I'm going to ask you is, what form of art do you enjoy other than the ones you're an expert on? And I can tell you, for me, it's just music. Music. I mean, what would I do without music? I think all of us. But let's get started. Let me have you introduce yourself, if you don't mind. We can start just from this and go one by one to my left. What I would like to ask you is, tell us your name, and then how you are currently involved with art. Okay. Please.
Hello, everybody. My name is David Murrieta. I've been teaching art for 20 years, 10 years elementary, 10 years high school at Sierra Linda High School in West Phoenix. When I'm not teaching art, I'm painting murals around Phoenix at restaurants, business, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I really enjoy it. As far as music or other art that I enjoy music. Mm-hmm. And when I'm painting, I have to have my music with me to give me some motivation.
What's the genre that you like?
Sometimes jazz. Sometimes I feel a little jazzy sometimes.
Ah, okay.
Sometimes I feel like cumbias or tejano.
Okay.
It just depends on how I wake up that day.
Of course. Sometimes you need those love songs, right?
Oh, yeah. Some romantic once in a while.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you, David. Okay. Thank you for being here. And by the way, you are a veteran, and thank you for your service. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm not aware if any other, but if you are too. Yes. Thank you so much. You're next.
Thank you for having us over here. Name is Ramon Piraeus, and I'm a retired college professor from Phoenix College. Taught there for 30-some years. I'm also a resident artist at ALEC, the Latino Cultural Center here in Phoenix. One of the things that people know me for is I worked on the movie The Lord of the Rings. I worked on the prosthetics. I did the masks and the paintings for Liv Tyler, Sean Astin, Christopher Lee, and on and on.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I've also taught at Wei University in China. I've got artwork in Brazil, Cuba, Ireland, And it's just, there's a lot of things that I do. But anyway, I really enjoy art. It's part of my life. And, I sing while I paint, too.
So you also enjoy music.
Yes.
Now, so since you were a young kid, I assume that you were attracted to the arts?
Well, when I was growing up, they told me, don't be an artist because you're going to starve to death.
Oh, wow.
And so we worked in the fields to some degree. And one of the things when I was a kid, we were picking cotton here in Arizona, as a matter of fact. We lived in Colorado. And I would find out where the damp earth was, which was clay. I didn't know it was clay. So I'd take it home and I sculpt things. And so by the time I got to high school, once again, everybody, especially in our community, they say, no, don't be no. Te vas a morir de hambre.
Oh, wow. That's a strong concept,
Yeah.
seems like.
And so,
Wow.
but when I got to high school, they said, you know what, there's something for you. So they enrolled me in graphic design. And so I got a degree in a bachelor's degree in graphic design. I got a master's in business administration and worked on my doctorate. So
Wow, congratulations.
Thank
You're a very accomplished Latino.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And now Carmella, right?
Yes, my name is Carmella Ramirez, and I'm a Valley native. I've been in music and production for the last 42 years. I spent about 30 years working for the city of Phoenix as an arts and cultural producer and ran a lot of the downtown facilities.
What does that mean for us that we don't understand those
Well,
terms?
For me, my position at the city was to not only produce festivals and arts experiences for people, but to also educate. I directed the Phoenix Center for the Arts for 22 years, and in that center, we ran an arts gallery, a theater, and lots of classes, whether it was in music or visual arts, dance, languages, special needs. I mean, trying to get the entire community in to understand the arts, whether you wanted to be an artist yourself or, like you said, it's a great communicator. That's where it starts. But I also do music. I've been a performer. I started off in rhythm and blues and then jazz, and now my specialty is Latin jazz salsa. I've been doing a group called Carmella Ramirez for the last 30 years. This is my 30-year anniversary with that band. So this year is a very unusual year. We've been doing some very big, high-profile concerts. I've performed a lot locally. I've gone as far out of the country as Japan to celebrate the Himeji 100-year anniversary of their castle. Performed at the National Museum for Women in the Arts in Washington, and lots of other things. My biggest thrill when I'm not doing production or music is probably visual arts. I really like to treat my eyes to a lot of things. And my eyes are, I think, always open. It excites me. Colors excite me. And different multimedia things excite me. It's just always interesting. I always want to touch them, and I'm told not to, but
Right.
I have to touch.
Just briefly, I know that art is all over the place, and we were talking off the air how life is, it has so much suffering and pain, and it's tough. And how, you seem to be a strong believer of arts coming in to ease that experience, to bring in a little bit of joy, happiness.
Oh, absolutely. I think, especially when times are really, really tough, whether it's economically or socially, I think every artist uses their platform to go out there and make it just a little bit better.
Right.
I think that's the gift that we all have, that we're all given as artists, is to be able to use our platform to get out there, create situations. If it's a sad time, chances are there's going to be a lot of people coming together to talk about it,
Right.
and we can create those situations for them.
And it's too bad that apparently there's this concept that don't pursue arts because then you're going to live in poverty kind of thing, right?
That
So
applies to musicians too.
Yeah, it does. It applies to musicians. And unfortunately, sometimes that's very true. I think especially when I was working for the city, it's a matter of not only teaching the art form, but you have to understand the business
Right.
of it. I think 50% is the talent, and the other 50% is understanding how to produce your talent, how to make it work for you financially.
And let's see how we do with time to
Yeah.
maybe come back to those
Sure.
issues. Can we continue to my right?
Annie Lopez. I am a visual artist. I've been doing that for 35 years, active in the downtown Phoenix scene, beginning with the Mars art group back in the early 80s, which was a Chicano art group. And gallery when we needed a gallery because no one would show our artwork. And I started out in photography, and now I'm taking it to 3 dimensions. I've been lately working in printing on paper, the paper that you use to wrap tamales, and making it into dresses.
Wow.
That's what I've been doing lately. I love listening to music while I'm working, but I love to write. And so I also try to include snippets of writing in my artwork.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Edgar Fernandez, and I'm a visual artist. And how I got involved in art was really young. You know, just drawing cartoons, getting influenced by animation, Japanese mangas, and stuff like that. And then later on in middle school, I started to get into graffiti. Following those paths, I was like, okay, I want to be a graffiti artist.
So graffiti in a kind of, say, a professional, that doesn't mean you went graffitiing the walls,
Yeah,
but
graffiti
as
the
an
walls.
art.
Yeah, I graffitied the wall.
And the reason why I say this is because there's some people who don't believe that graffiti is an art.
Canvas.
Right,
It's
right.
Yeah.
And that's why I brought this one because,
People don't believe in bad graffiti. That's what it is.
right, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
But yeah, that's why I kind of got started and was part of my motivation where I'm at now. And then I started taking classes at Phoenix College. And I took a drawing class there, and I really got hooked. I took every art class possible there. And I was there for like 7 years, and now I'm at ASU pursuing my BFA in painting.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, he said I started very young. Well, you're super young still. So it must have been a kid.
Yeah, I was just a kid
Right.
at the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Drawing in the cradle.
James Garcia.
Hello, I'm James Garcia, and I am a playwright, primarily in terms of my creative work. I also direct, and every once in a great while I get on stage and act, or try to act. And my background has always been as a writer. I do a lot of different kinds of writing, but stumbled into playwriting, in the early 90s with a one-man short play based on a person who was a man who was dying of AIDS, a local activist in Austin, Texas. I played that role, and that just sort of hooked me, and I've been doing that ever since. I've written more than 30 plays now, short plays,
Wow.
10-minute plays, one-act plays, full-length plays, and I write primarily plays that are realistically based, except I do a satirical political comedy every other year that has nothing to do with reality, but a lot to do with truth.
Okay, okay.
So that's basically me.
Yeah. So we have paintings, we have music, we have photography and more. Painting as well,
Muralist.
and muralist, and then theater, you could say, drama. Okay, we're about to go on our first break, and we'll be back and address more. I'll have some questions for you, and even if I don't ask you anything, if you feel there's something, and I know you do, feel free to bring it to the audience. I think art is an amazing thing, and it is so amazing that sometimes we don't even see it, we don't even perceive things as art, but it is, and art makes our life easier, because I mean, when things get rough, and when you always have this song that will lift you up, or you'll go and see a play. I mean, for me, music does it. I mean, love songs, or happy songs, sad songs. I mean, and I always say that whoever composes the lyrics gets credit, but how about the music? Composing music to me is an amazing thing. So anyway, stay with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection with the subject today, Art, the Great Communicator. I'd like to read some concepts that I got in the internet. It says, life has a lot of challenges, lots of pain. We work too hard. Sometimes it is boring. Art comes in to distract us from those difficulties, to help us see other aspects of life, away from pain, away from struggles. Many times the media paints a negative picture of life, negative stories. Art comes in to bring in beauty, to bring us back to what really matters. Pablo Picasso said, the purpose of art is to wash the dust of daily life off our shoulders. So this is an amazing quote from Pablo Picasso. Again, the purpose of art is to wash the dust of daily life off our shoulders. So let's get into some of these concepts of art. Can I ask you, and anyone can start, we know that art can be a healer. It can heal you. It can move you into a new realm, etc. Let's talk about how art has been used, perhaps by Latinos in the past few decades or several decades. I know that art is a communicator, and a lot of time, many times, you seem to emphasize that all the time art is used to communicate a message that a lot of times words that you cannot say by words, but a painting may do it, a mural might do it. I know that you had the Chicano movement. I don't know if there are any art symbols that stuck with. I know the image of Che Guevara has always seemed to be like present in people's mind a lot. That has to be, I think you would agree, that is a part of art. So, yeah, by all means, just if you can help us understand how art has been used in the past couple, maybe 2 decades.
A couple things come to mind as you're talking, as you're kind of articulating this question. I think art, there's this kind of dual side of art. There's a kind of organic, if I may use the word, ecstasy that comes from art, right? Just the pleasure of the moment, whether it's a piece of music that you somehow identify with, or you're standing in a gallery or next to a wall and you're looking at a piece of art and you're just absorbing it. There's a physical quality about that we experience, right? It's tangible. And then, of course, there's always the symbolism of what the art is doing, whether it's theater or music.
Right.
And so as you were talking, I was thinking of how far does art back go? I think art goes as far back as human beings have been able to create symbols, right? And we think of those, caves in Europe and in Africa, and I'm thinking of a play that is considered the oldest existing play in the Americas, called Rabina La Chi, that was developed by the Guatemalans hundreds of years before the colonialists arrived.
Wow.
That they performed in a parade form. So they would literally be in a parade, and people would follow them as the play was being performed.
Right.
And that play is still performed now.
Right.
Wow.
And there's symbolism, there's culture that literally stretches back hundreds of years, and there's a story there. And then there's also the ecstasy of the moment, because people who are following the play as it moves through the city are experiencing a kind of festival sort of quality about their enjoyment.
It's they're being transported into another realm.
Yeah.
And James, there's a young artist that just painted a mural, and you were there. I was there.
Yes.
Can you just briefly say, so we can pass the ball to the others? But I think that's very significant.
There's a young woman here, relatively new to the art world, but doing very nice work. Lucinda Hinojos is her name, and she just created a beautiful mural on Central and Illini. I think that's the 3200 block or something, here in Phoenix. And it's an image of a child, a migrant child, who finds a cage that's filled with doves, and she leans over and she opens the cage and releases the doves and butterflies.
And butterflies, yeah.
And for her, she dedicated it to dreamers, to the young undocumented immigrants, and for her it symbolized the sort of, their birth into this world, their view about this country, and of course it symbolizes Latino culture and our migration, here, and our presence here,
and also how they're restricted, how they're being restricted, and if they were just let go, they could just soar and fly.
It's a beautiful, beautiful
It
piece.
is.
And it adorns now a an entire huge wall in South Central Phoenix, and I think it just brings something to the area.
And let me go back to you, and then by all means, anybody. David, you painted the AARP mural, and can you just relate to the audience what the thought was for that mural?
Okay, sure. Back about a year ago, no, about a year and a half ago, I got together with Alex Juarez from the AARP, and we discussed that in San Antonio, Texas, there's a mural, an AARP mural that I saw in a commercial. I said, well, in Phoenix, this could be a possibility. So I brought the idea to you, Mr. Parra, and Mr. Juarez, and we brainstormed some ideas. And then the hard part was finding a wall. After we had an idea, we had to look around downtown Phoenix. Many walls are painted with murals, and that's a great thing. But artists are having trouble finding walls, so I had to look around and search some empty walls. And before I was going home, I looked at this wall. Oh, I'll ask this guy. And short story long, or long story short, I found the wall, and I asked the guy, and he said, no problem. So then after that, we got the community involved. And, it took about 3 weeks, and the weather was starting to get hot, so the paint was starting to get sticky. So we wanted to beat the summer heat. And with the community involvement, we brainstormed some ideas. And when you pass by the mural now, it has concepts of Arizona, Latino history, and that type of subject matter.
Right. We have there Congressman Ed Pastor. We have Raul H. Castro, the first Mexican-American governor. We have Chapito Chavarria, Post-41, Landscapes of Arizona, a group of, that resembles mariachi music.
Right.
So art can be used. And can we come to you, Carmella, because help us understand. I mean, because everybody seems to enjoy music in addition to the art that you work in. Music. What about music?
Music. Well, I hear you say how much you love music and it's your favorite. I think that's instant for anyone. The beauty about music, for me, and what I've experienced over the years, is that it is a great universal language. You don't have to speak the language, you don't have to understand that culture yet, but it allows you to listen, to be moved emotionally. It increases your brain awareness for mathematics. I mean, this is why I think there's such a cry to keep music and arts itself in the schools.
Right.
Because it does. It helps format your brain in a lot of ways. The more you experience it. And it brings community together. To me, that's the most important thing. I use music as a huge communicator. I know that just by creating situations where there's music or a variety of arts involved, you bring people together and you give them a fun surrounding to where they can all celebrate. They start to socialize. They build better communities through it. Economically, it creates situations. If you have a huge festival say in downtown Phoenix, and it's a 2-day festival, that means that people are traveling probably in from Tucson or other states. The hotel business goes up, the restaurant business goes up, and the government and everybody there is very happy.
They love you.
Yeah, they love you because it's bringing money into the community and into businesses and everything else. So it has so many different platforms.
Just a quick question because there's the concept of crossover. You're in America, and I think there has to be a struggle with the mariachi, the Mexican type of music, and then the salsas and more Latinos. Is there an issue with that? Because there seems to be there's a type of music that seems to make that crossover a little easier. I think we were talking about salsa making it a little easier than, say, mariachi. Mariachi seem to still stick to a certain segment. Are you able to address anything around that?
I'll use myself as an example. I started off in rhythm and blues and jazz, and that was in the late 70s. And by 1988 is when I started the salsa band. I am Mexican American. I'm not Puerto Rican, I'm not Cuban, etc. But the music always fascinated me because this is what I heard at home. My dad was a great jazz lover, and he loved salsa and Latin jazz. So when I started this particular band, really the Latinos in Phoenix were not too crazy about it because it wasn't
Right, of course.
cumbia, it wasn't ranchero, it wasn't mariachi. And what are you doing as a Mexican, singing salsa?
Right.
But I was so fascinated with it because a lot of my background was in jazz, right? So this form of salsa, it's Afro-Cuban music, brought forth by a lot of Latino cultures like Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. And I think over the years since 1988, I have been able to cross different cultures within our own Latino community together through this music. And I do incorporate some of the cumbia. I do incorporate a lot of different sounds that they might like to hear. I think what's happening though in Latin music today is that we are crossing over big time. There's a lot of artists that are very responsible for mixing mariachi with pop or salsa with reggae. There's just lots of different interpretations of music now, but that's a natural phenomenon in anything.
Right.
In any mixed media within the visual arts, it's the same thing.
Right.
The more you experiment and the more knowledge that we have, we create a bigger language for everybody around the world.
I think we have about a minute and a half. Anybody else want to say anything? Go ahead, by all means.
Going back to the impact that the visual arts has on people, this is a personal experience. I had a commission to do 4 paintings for St. Catherine of Siena, 10 foot tall by 4 and 6.5 feet wide, and it was St. Catherine of Siena, Blessed Mary, and then Christ was in the middle, St. John, and then Magdalena. And we had the opening, we had the, and after it was over, we had kind of like the mixer. And this lady came to me and she said, and she was very sincere. And she said, I love the work. She says, and the minute I saw it, I felt the presence come over me, and I think I was healed. And I not for 1 minute did I doubt her because she was so sincere. And so this is the impact that art has at times. So.
Yeah, I mean, it really has the power to touch the emotion in us that maybe nothing else can. The music, the art. When we look at history, the temples, I mean, it's just amazing, the cathedrals and the temples and the paintings in the Catholic churches, for example. It's just unbelievable. So art is again, we're always exposed to art even when we're not fully aware of it. Okay, we have to go on our second break, and then we'll come back to both of you because I know Annie and then you. We want to hear from you a little bit more about how you use the arts. And also, art has been used in a kind of more of an activism and perhaps political sense. So let's also see how that is being used in that regard. Stay with us. You are listening to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The subject today, art, the great communicator. Is it a great communicator?
Everyone was talking about how art heals the viewer, but it also heals the artists themselves. And I know that I've used a lot of personal stories, a lot of family stories in my artwork, and some experiences that are not so happy. And I just kind of feel like once I get them on the wall, they're hung on the wall, other people see them, and I no longer have that burden. And I've had people cry over pieces that I've made. It's just like, I'm past that now, I may have been crying when I was making it or whatever, and then I'm handing it over to the viewer, and it's such a release. But it's very healing for artists to be able to have this platform, to be able to just present it to people and say, here, this is what I went through. Maybe you did too. And I get a lot of stories from people who are who have the same experience, or they've gone through the same experience, or they're going through the same experience. And it's it's kind of a relief that they are able to find somebody who is experiencing the same thing. And so I try to encourage people who may not think that they are artists to try something in their arts. And that, they may not know that they are good at anything, but a lot of things that we do in our lives are art. It may be our gardening. It may be creating clothing or something. It could be anything, decorating your house. This may be your art. It's just like so I encourage people to, if they're having an issue or whatever, is to fall on that. Write it down, sing a song, whatever they have to do in order to get it out. But it is for me, it's my way to express myself and to tell my story through the artwork.
Yeah, and you sent me this line: I use my art to share my opinion and my experience and my family's history. It is my way of nicely stating that we brown-skinned folks have been in Arizona for a very long time.
And we have.
Yeah. So now, how do you convey that through the art that you do, especially the second part, that we brown-skinned folks have been in Arizona for a very long time?
Straight up presenting things like my birth certificate, like my parents' birth certificates, my grandparents' naturalization papers appear in my artwork. Anything I can do to say, look, we've been here this long. Some people think we just got here,
right?
And it's no. A lot of people think yes, exactly. Surprise! But, so and that's the way sometimes some people need to see that. They need to see actual proof that that we've been here, that we've been part of the community, but that we've productive and everything for this long.
So there is that saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So are you saying that we should begin to use more pictures too, so that we don't have to use 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 words?
We use whatever works.
Right.
Whatever works.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now, tell us again what you actually do. You mentioned the las hojas del tamal and that kind of. Can you tell us a little bit more, a few more details about the things that you use to convey what you want to convey?
Well, on the photography end, I've been working for a few years in my storybook series, which is a photograph paired with a little snippet of a family history story or an experience that I've gone through. And then also on top of that, another series I've been doing is I've been making dresses out of the paper that you use to wrap tamales with. That afterwards, after the corn husk and everything, when you get something in a store, it's wrapped in a paper, and it's this really heavy-duty kind of parchment paper that will. But I print cyanotype on that. Cyanotype is an old photographic process, but I print on that paper, sew it together to kind of make my fabric, and then cut pattern pieces out of it, sew it together, and make dresses. And those dresses represent me. They represent my story. And in those dresses, there'll be a story about me being a C student in art when I was in grade school, or
Me too.
Yeah, there you go. Or my grandparents' naturalizations papers ended up in one dress. My father's final year at experiencing Alzheimer's. Stories about how a family falls apart when they're doing caregiving, that sort of thing. So,
Wow.
So my stories end up in
Yeah.
dress.
And the last time our family took a trip to Mexico, my daughter took a picture that captured the door of our old house in Mexico, and it gives you a sense of distance from you're getting out of that home. And then now that we know everything that our family has gone through, she posted that picture on Facebook and just wrote a little something like, that door is the door that made this happen and this happen. And it's like that little picture that had no significance to most people had 1,000 words. And it is unbelievable. Edgar, how do you use art, and what from the works that you've done, what has been some of the things that you have communicated or wanted to convey to community?
So one of my goals to convey to the community is to bring back the essence of our ancestors, the ancestors being before the Spanish arrived, bringing back the truth and the energy, the connection to the land, to the people, and our education and bringing that alive through the work and symbology, symbols, and doing that in murals. I think it's in a very powerful way.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about the connection to the land? Is that a strong concept from the Indian community that I seem to gather that? Do you feel that we've departed from those connections that brings us so much perhaps energy, and we've departed, and is that what you're trying to bring us kind of back to those concepts?
Yeah, bring us back to those concepts and just honor and appreciate the land, because without the land we wouldn't be here.
Right.
It gives us food to eat every day, and we treat it as a living being, not just this object that, you have to be conscious of what you're putting out there and what you're giving back. It's this cycle of giving back and receiving.
Yeah. Who helped you to kind of get those beliefs and feelings? I mean, you're a very young person, and I really admire you that your young age, you have that in you. How did you get that understanding and that appreciation?
It started back when I started just making changes in my life, like my diet, my education, and then I started really researching and looking about our true history. And because it's not really been taught at schools, everything's really washed out. And so I started doing my own research, and I started hooking up with mentors and getting educated about our indigenous ancestors and how they've been here for a really long time, as you said. And kind of just a lot of meditation, and a lot of visions come through dreams. Also, when I go to hike at mountains, I see them present in the rocks, and I paint those images in my paintings as well, what I see, and I write things down. I keep a dream journal, and I write all this down, and I project it onto my painting.
Have you, can you point to us at some of the things that you've done? Maybe perhaps when we're driving by, we can stop. Have you done any murals, several? Where are they at?
Yeah, I've done several murals. I've done about almost 40 murals now.
40?
Yes.
Wow.
A lot of them inside residence, but a lot of them are also at schools. There's one on 13th Street in Washington. You'll see it if you're on the light rail. The school's called Shaw Elementary. And I did that 3 years ago with a group of 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders. And we came up with the concept with the kids, and the kids wanted to see a mural about flourishment. So the community flourishing with nature, but also technology building together.
Yeah. Do you do speaking to kids, to young students?
Yeah, I do a lot of workshops. I work a lot with the youth at nonprofits, schools. Schools invite me. David invited me once to speak at his school. And I think it's always a pleasure to give back.
Yeah.
And to inspire one kid is a goal for me. Inspire another one, that's great.
Great. And we are working with AARP. We want to do a painting of some sort, some workshops. And I've reached out to Dave, and hopefully we can do maybe at Post 41 or something, just to do more of these elements. It's amazing, Edgar. I really congratulate you, because you are super young, and to have these insights and these feelings. I mean, I don't know if you want to give them any words or make any comments about it.
I'm just a little bothered by the fact that you keep calling him so young, and we're like not included in that.
And then I'm the least one who is supposed to do that, right?
No. The only thing I don't have any specific words to inspire him, because I think where he is in his career, he clearly has a clear view of where he's going.
Yes.
And I've known him for a few years now. I forget how we met, but I actually own a piece of his artwork that's still in my storage room for my theater company right now. And it's 4 pieces, 4 panels that are 4 by 8, and they actually depict the refugees from Sudan, which of course has been undergoing civil war for decades now, and they were used as the backdrop for a short play that my wife wrote that I directed called Lost Boys Found, and it's a beautiful, a bit dreamlike kind of imagery of people leaving their homeland in these villages, and it's a beautiful piece. And typically when I have backdrops, they're pretty generic for my theater productions, and I reuse them or paint them over, and I've never done that with this, and I probably never will.
Right.
No, I think he's on his way in so many ways, and already here in so many ways.
Yeah. Perfect. Let me read a little bit of the purpose of art, just a few concepts. Number one is to communicate ideas politically, spiritually, philosophically. It's to communicate ideas. Number two, to create a sense of beauty. Number three is to explore the nature of perception. Number four is simply for pleasure. Number five is to generate strong emotions, and sometimes number six, for the purpose the purpose may also be just seemingly non-existent. Yeah, and again, I made reference to the picture, interior design, how a person designs their house in the inside, the outside, the landscapes. It's just art, and now I realize why so many people are so inclined to do a lot of things, maybe even yard work. You fix your yard in a certain way, you fix your home in your living room. Like my wife, well, you know what she does a lot? She changes the place of the sofas and everything, like quite a bit. That's art, I think. Yeah, it is. And now I'm realizing you kind of get bored from seeing the same, seating arrangement or what have you, and they do that, and we all do that. Maybe some of us are a little bit more boring than others, but and I say it's because of me. But again, it's just I think we have art in us, and everybody does. We might not know it. And in some is more visual, others may make it more into a career, etc. We have to go on our third break. We'll be back. You're listening to AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Welcome to AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. I've enjoyed this show very much. I think art is fun. Art is not a heavy subject. It's more of a fun subject. And we only have a few more minutes in this last segment. Let's go back to some of, even in this country, music has been used pretty much to oppose or to even rebel against the status quo, if you will. Music has been used for that. Carmella, would you help us kind of take us through maybe one or two periods where that happened?
Wow. Well, it's always been used as a communicator.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to let James expand a little bit more on the politics of it. But you were talking about rock and roll.
Right.
One of the first expressions of music to where, I consider all the wording in music as poetry in motion. Okay, so you have an artist who might be writing about something politically going on or they're heartbreaking, etc. But when you combine the music and the words to make statements, that's very, very, very powerful, for people to hear. And there have been some incredible times. I think the 60s, with all of the flower children that were around, the Beatles and everything else. There was Bob Dylan. I mean, when you get poetry in motion like that, to talk about community, to talk about social injustice, etc., and it's expressed through music, it makes it even more powerful.
Wow.
Those movements of music combined with the wording may hit you like a ton of bricks, and it may be really great, or it may really turn you off. That can happen too.
And I would add that, because I think we had this experience recently, Carmella, that sometimes a genre of music, sometimes just by preserving a type of music, is its own kind of subversive thing, because with the music that was created by people like Celia Cruz and Tito Puente and all of the other great salsa artists, part of what they were doing was saying that our culture matters. Right? We may be here in the United States touring the U.S., but what we're doing is also reminding you of where we came from, and that identity matters at the same level that rock and roll does, that classical music does, etc. And so there's almost speaking of politics, there's almost a political subversive quality about simply doing that kind of music without necessarily saying anything specifically political.
Right.
I'm thinking of also when I think of art in general, I think there's always politics involved, not in a partisan sense, not in terms of political parties per se, but there's always politics involved because human beings are involved, and if human beings are involved and they're moving through life, they interact in political ways every day simply by the food they eat and the money they spend and so on and so forth. There's always that. And I think for artists who think of their work, and I think of my work as a lot of it is rooted in social justice. It's a conscious thing for me.
Right.
What part of what we're doing is we're trying to balance simple humanity, straightforward humanity, how people treat each other, how mothers treat daughters and fathers treat sons, and et cetera, and vice versa. But we're also asking ourselves questions about how we exist as communities in this broader society, and ultimately whether we deserve to, right? Whether we have a right to. And I think all of us around the table on some level have experienced, have had to live through that question. Why are we in a society necessarily that sometimes very specifically says, you don't have a right to be here? And through our art, we're essentially saying, yes, we do. Look at it. Here it is on the wall.
Right.
Come over and watch me on stage.
Yeah, right. I laughed at myself many times, and I tell my kids that I have music in my iPod, and I listen more to music than radio, and I just let the songs play, and they have all kinds of. I'll be listening to disco, and then to cumbia, and then mariachi, and I laugh at myself. If people knew what I'm listening to, they would be like, "This guy is crazy," because we like all kinds of genres, I'm going to ask you to address two things. Number one is it true that you're gonna live in poverty if you go to the arts? Number one, and number two, what would you say to the young student, the young man, woman, any person out there that is thinking about pursuing arts? What would you say to them in terms of whether this is worth it or not? So if you can address both, and we can just go around. Yeah.
As an art teacher at the high school every day, I tell students that there's so many career fields in the arts. Even a big thing right now is tattooing, mural painting, theater, music, drama, singing, all types of arts. And many students, I try to open their minds that they don't have to work at a warehouse after high school, or if they go to college, there's so many ideas for opportunities out there. And I have a student that he's been painting in the classroom. He's made $500 in one semester by painting artwork for family, these companies. And I tell the students this story. It's possible if they put their mind to it and just did some dedication.
So you have the talent. There's like just call it raw talent. You can draw, for example. So they have to be creative. In terms of how they're going to channel that art in a way that it also is financially,
Right.
So So just because they like to do something, if that's not going to yield some income, then they might think of other options. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Like I just tell them there's so many options out there I make mistakes when I'm painting and drawing, but they're just part of a growing process. I'm sure with singing and drama and everything like that.
And I think that part of the problem is when we talk about if you're an artist, you can live in poverty. Is sort of what is poverty, first of all? Right?
So you're not going to get rich.
No, but what is poverty in the sense that we really are in a culture here in the United States in which we hold to the highest esteem, the billionaires and the CEOs in many ways, right? We sort of say, oh, they have reached success because they are worth $3.6 billion, or they're the Bill Gateses of the world, right? That's kind of a standard here in American capitalism that has existed, so that we measure then someone who may be creating art and maybe they're only making $40,000 a year, but is that is it really poverty?
Got it.
And can you subsist? And if you are subsisting on $40,000 a year, are you necessarily terribly preoccupied with the fact that Bill Gates has a completely climate-controlled mansion? I'm not. I mean, so and of course, so when you tell students that, when you tell young people coming up who are going into the arts, I think it's about anything, and I've told my children this forever. Pick whatever you enjoy doing. I don't care if you're a carpenter or a truck driver or a neurosurgeon. I don't care. Just enjoy it.
Right.
Pick that first.
Right.
And then everything else will come. And you may never get rich.
Right.
But that's not the objective. Right?
So art. Could you start maybe just on the side, and then let it develop, and perhaps one day you'll be able to do it full time? Is that?
Well, one of the things that I used to tell my students, and then I still do talk to groups, is that, first of all, everybody's an artist. They just have to find their niche.
Okay.
And then get an education, because one of the things that I talk to them about is that education is like a ladder. You get an AA degree, and then you climb up the rungs, and you look around, and there's opportunities. You get your bachelor's, you go up more, and there's more opportunities.
Okay.
You get your master's, and there's more opportunities. So that
Not necessarily on art.
not necessarily on art.
Okay,
For
got it.
example, my master's is in business administration.
Okay.
But art is part of me, and I will always do art. And so one of the things that I tell them, I enjoy doing it. I don't think I work. I think I
Okay.
just go and play. And
They pay you for having fun,
for
right?
having fun, yes. And so this is one of the things that I want to drill into students,
Right.
in that do what your passion calls for.
Right.
Have passion for what you want to do, but get an education.
But
too.
be economical in your thinking.
Exactly.
You have to make a living still.
Yes,
So
definitely,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And-
Right.
Again, I go back to when I was at the Center for the Arts. A lot of our classes were also on, how to license your artwork, or how to develop your own music company or be a producer. A lot of kids that love the arts, it comes naturally because it is natural within us, and we just flourish, especially as kids, and we enjoy it. But if you really want to take it on as a profession, you do have to think about another way of making money sometimes.
right.
I can't tell you how many times we're called in to try to raise money for a musician who has passed on, who doesn't have a pension, who never
Wow.
planned for anything
Right,
for their
right, right.
family or whatnot, and we're all struggling to try to help them, get to that next level. So you have to
Got
to
it.
instill in them to celebrate your art form and everything, but definitely get an education.
Right.
And I was going to say too that sometimes, like in visual arts, it's a solitary process. You don't see
Yeah.
other human beings, so don't be afraid to have a job on the side, to be out and see other people. Because I do have a job, a regular job, and then I do my artwork.
Okay.
So it's something that
Right.
you need community.
Right.
One advice that I always tell when I'm doing workshops is always believe in yourself. And if you believe in yourself from the heart, everything else will come through. Opportunities will show up. The people you're supposed to meet will start opening up. And just stay focused. Keep your mind sharp. Stay educated. Follow your heart and do what you love. And don't let other people doubt you. If you believe in yourself, that's all that counts.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Just in the last few seconds that we have, just careers as professions in colleges, for instance. What are we talking about? What sort of careers do colleges offer in the realm of art?
Well, a statistic is that most people that go get a degree do not work in that degree when they get out of
Right.
college, because when they get out, they find other opportunities that are more fun or better adapted for their needs.
In a classroom of our students, 40 students, let's say, not everybody is there because they like to be there, but but I encourage as many as I can, and I try to be a positive role model in the arts. I make teaching art as fun as possible. It's the fun. I tell them this is going to be your favorite class throughout the school day.
Right. And what sort of projects do you work on? Just very briefly.
Sure. We do. I teach art, beginning art at the school. So we introductory drawing, painting, the real fundamentals.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we have come to the end of our show. It's been great. I think art is a great communicator. Again, from the theater. I mean, I'm not a big fan of movies. I never got to see one of your plays, and I have made it a point to. Yes, I want to be there because I have seen some theater, some plays, and there's just great. The singing and everything is just unbelievable. Music, it's amazing. Painting and everything. So thank you so much. We really hope you enjoy this show. We're probably going to do more on this subject. Have a great week. This was AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection.